U.S. President Donald Trump has warned that the country could face an economic and national security disaster if the Supreme Court rules against his administration's use of emergency powers to impose wide-ranging tariffs. Now, Trump's warning comes as justices raise doubts about whether a decades-old law which does not explicitly mention tariffs can legally justify such sweeping trade action by the President of the United States. Here's more.
U.S. President Donald Trump is warning of an economic and national security disaster if the Supreme Court overturns its use of emergency powers to impose sweeping tariffs on nearly every country. Speaking Monday, Trump claimed the tariffs have generated trillions in tariff and investment income.
The numbers were reported so incorrectly. The real numbers are trillions of dollars have been taken in or gotten in terms of investment from the tariffs.
Trump had previously floated the idea of using tariff revenues to pay for what he calls a dividend to lower-earning Americans and repeated his plans on Monday.
We're going to issue a dividend to our middle-income people and lower-income people of about $2,000, and we're going to use the remaining tariffs to lower our debt.
During last week's oral arguments on the tariff case, Supreme Court justices cast doubt on Trump's authority to impose tariffs under the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which contains no references to tariffs. Justice Amy Coney Barrett suggested it could be a mess for the courts to administer refunds to U.S. importers who have paid tariffs that were declared illegal. Trump took issue with media reports about the amount of duties collected that the government might have to repay if the Supreme Court agrees with a lower court that Trump's sweeping tariffs were illegal.
So they're not giving the right numbers. It would be an economic disaster. It would be a national security disaster if we lost the case in the Supreme Court.
It remains unclear exactly when the highest court will rule and whether companies will be entitled to refunds of more than $100 billion in IEEPA tariffs paid so far if Trump loses. The tariff debate comes as Trump's poll numbers have slipped in recent months, with growing public frustration over inflation and economic uncertainty, driving voters toward Democrats in recent elections. Yet Trump hailed what he called a decline in inflation since he took office, arguing that food prices and energy prices were coming down and inflation would be down to 1.5%, quote, pretty soon. But government data shows tariffs continue to push up costs for everyday goods, from clothing and furniture to appliances and sporting gear. Consumer prices rose 3% in the year through September, slightly higher than the previous month.
Now, Switzerland could soon clinch a breakthrough trade deal with the United States to cut U.S. tariffs on Swiss exports to 15%, possibly as early as Thursday or Friday, according to officials familiar with the talks. More details in this next report.
Switzerland could score a deal to lower tariffs on its exports to the US by the end of this week. That's according to a source on Tuesday. They said the tariff rate could be lowered to 15% from the 39% it's been at since August. The source added the deal could arrive by Thursday or Friday or early next week. But they warned an agreement wasn't certain until President Donald Trump gives his approval. The US tariffs currently placed on Switzerland are among the highest duties Washington has put on another country. It's threatened Swiss access to one of its biggest markets for its goods by making its products more expensive than other regions with lower duties. Industries affected include Swiss powerhouses like precision machinery, watches and chocolate. The Swiss Economic Affairs Ministry has been leading negotiations with Washington. It refused to comment on the ongoing discussions on Tuesday. Trump further said earlier this week he was working on a deal to lower tariffs on goods from Switzerland. Swiss officials have pitched a package of investment pledges and proposals. They aim to lower the US deficit in hopes of getting an agreement. Swiss media reported a group of the country's business leaders also met Trump in the White House last week to discuss the impact of tariffs on their operations. They reportedly presented him with a specifically engraved gold bar and a Rolex watch. News of a potential deal sent shares in Swiss luxury watch brands Richemont and Swatch Group higher on Tuesday.